Now we're going to have a panel around the theme Industry 4.0 and how one platform can actually solve multiple use cases. The panel will be facilitated by our own Seth, and I'm handing over the stage now to you, Seth.
Thank you, Thomas. Good afternoon and welcome to Quuppa's industry panel discussion in the Quuppa Virtual Event series. My name is Seth Noon and I am the host for today's panel. I'm by day responsible for business development and sales for the Americas at Quuppa. And if you've been participating in any of the other Quuppa sessions, you've heard from Quuppa partners and enterprise organizations how they are leveraging real-time location data in healthcare and in retail and sports, to name a few verticals. In this session, however, we'll be discussing the use of real-time location in industrial environments. I think no matter what vertical or business you name, there is always an opportunity to do things better and faster and cheaper and hopefully more profitably. Industry and manufacturing, of course, are no exception and probably represent an area where automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and interconnectedness is having a massive impact in building more efficient processes and higher quality products and better information and certainly visibility into the business in general. But what does that actually mean practically, and how is real-time location data part of that evolution? And that's what I am hoping to explore with our panelists today. And on our panel, we have three guests representing different parts of the Quuppa partner ecosystem. So before we get started, let me ask our panelists to introduce themselves, their role, and maybe a brief explanation of their company's focus. And Ron, if you don't mind, can we start with you?
Absolutely, Seth. Nice to be here. It's quite a privilege, quite honestly. So let me tell you a little bit about my organization first. I work for a firm called Avanade. If you have not heard of Avanade, that's okay. My mom hasn't either. But we are a global system integrator, really born 20 years ago through a partnership from Accenture and Microsoft. Usually people recognize those two names. I expect most of our audience here today recognizes those two names. So what does that mean? At least for Avanade, it means we are a solution provider that focuses on Microsoft technology. Although these days, what is Microsoft technology versus what is not? The line is certainly getting blurred these days. So with that as backdrop, my role today at Avanade is lead our Canadian data and AI group focused on AI and IoT solutions. A bit of background for me, as I've only been around Avanade for a year and a half, but I've got a 20+ year-long career in some form of data, AI, BI, data warehousing through my 20+ years. Spent a significant portion of that in industry with 8 years at Coca-Cola, or the Coca-Cola bottling organization, working in manufacturing or our supply chain. Spent several years in a software firm, as well as my most recent tenure here at Avanade and some other professional services firms. So that's me. Seth, back to you.
Great, thank you, Ron. Gonzague, you are right next to me. So in order, why don't you give us a little bit about yourself and ELA?
Sure, thank you, Seth. My name is Gonzague Venet. I'm in charge of the business development in USA and Latin America at ELA Innovation. As you can hear it, ELA Innovation is a French company, even though we do have offices in America. I'm based out in Miami, Florida, and we are also present in Canada, in Toronto. So we are a company resolutely focused on innovation and involved in high potential markets. We work on a daily basis with global actors, I will say, that needs to integrate IoT in their industry in order to be more efficient. Our technology is made to solve a lot of different use cases in different industries, We work in healthcare, construction, logistics. Industry 4.0 that we'll discuss today is one of our main targets also. When our customer or when a customer contacts us, I will say they are looking to improve their productivity and safety in their facilities, and more than everything, to reduce their cost. To do so, what we do is to design and manufacture beacons, wireless industrial beacons for a wide range of applications, such as indoor locations, outdoor locations. We tend to locate people, assets, equipment, but we also have a large range of sensors in order to do temperature and humidity monitoring, motion detection, for example. So we identify ourselves as a manufacturer of tags, trying to provide robust casings, long life battery with the low TCO products. One important thing also to mention, so we are manufacturers, so we work with a strong ecosystem of partners all over the world in order to deliver our products to our customers.
Great, thank you, Gonzague. And Brad, could you regale us with your story, please?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, Seth, thank you for the opportunity to be on the panel. My name is Brad Williams, and I am a sales director and business development focused here in North America for a company by the name of Usecases. Usecases, to give you a little bit of background on a company that plays into all of our products, you have to go back about 20 years into the mid-90s, a little over 20 years into the mid-90s. The four founders who are still with the company today were all part of a lab in Cambridge University. The headquarters of Usecases is still located in Cambridge. But within this lab was focused on sentient computing, which now today is also known as ubiquitous computing, which is where the name Usecases comes from. And what that means is the idea that was built upon that has now become Usecases in two different products that I'll introduce here in a second, is the idea that at some point in time, computers would need to have an understanding of an interactivity with the physical world in order to inform each other or form individuals and have actionable business for the business applications that the founders of our company were involved in. That lab shuttered in the early 2000s. They all took a shot and said they were going to build upon the idea. So in 2007, the four founders launched their first two platforms. They knew it needed to be in a parallel path. Those platforms are known today as our Smartspace software platform. It's in its third generation, and it's application configuration for location services. And the other is Dimension 4, which is a location tracking ultra wideband system, also using GPS and BLE that we'll talk about a little bit, I believe, a little bit further on in the panel. But that's really at the core of where Usecases started. And today the four founders are with the company. We have over 900 deployments worldwide. We are in 9 of the top 10 global automotive manufacturers, our technology deployed, and 3 of the top 5 aerospace global manufacturers around the world.
Great. All right. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate that. And thank you all for the introductions of yourselves and the companies. So Gonzague, you actually mentioned it in your introductions. The first thing I wanted to get started with was defining Industry 4.1, or sorry, 4.0. I'm getting ahead of myself. The term certainly references, as we know it, the evolution and innovation of industrial and manufacturing processes that have taken place over hundreds of years, frankly. But can you guys define what it means in your world, in your companies, and the solutions that you guys offer to your end customers? And Gonzague, since you were kind enough to prompt me, can you get us started?
Sure. Thank you for giving me the lead on this. Industrial Internet of Things, also known as Industry 4.0 when it applies to manufacturing industry is a concept of integrating smart manufacturing machinery and advanced analytics, I will say, to help make every industry more efficient. We do think that the main goal is to be cost efficiency. IoT dramatically reduce the complexity, the time, and expenses associated with traditional business workflows. Now your question is how it applies to our company. At ELA Innovation, it's pretty simple. What we do is to fix a tag on an asset, a person, a product, on a production line, on a tool, and we track it. As simple as it is, we track a dot on a map on a real time. Now, having said that, our goal today is offering a tag able to work in a harsh environment with a long battery life. This is what we are trying to do on a daily basis. So this is where ELA Innovation comes as an expert, as a designer and manufacturer of connected objects for industrial use. We design products with very high autonomy. So some of our products can last up to 20 years. They are waterproof, they are IP68, they are robust, they can work in environments from -80°C to +300°C. Our portfolio allows us to cover, I will say, a lot of use cases with almost no maintenance costs.
Thank you, Gonzague. Ron, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, great lead in, Gonzague, Seth. I think in all of probably my perspective today, I'll have what we consider at Avanade a very pragmatic one. So I think the audience understands, the broad definition of Industry 4.0. So what I want to communicate to the group here is our approach is really getting beyond the hype. I know that there is importance, and we feel strongly in this as well, to have a roadmap to getting to Industry 4.0. But our approach to this is really getting started. So how do we do that? We've heard this expression a little bit of pilot purgatory. So get organizations and enterprises out of pilot purgatory in whatever solution they're trying. And we've got some specific approaches to that. Certainly we focus on ROI, business value, and everything we do, as Gonzague had mentioned, certainly. So of those pillars of Industry 4.0, it's really, as I mentioned, sort of in my role here at Avanade, it's really focused on AI and AI solutions. And again, with a practical approach, how do these pieces of tech fit into the broad spectrum of Industry 4.0, and how do we bring that to life? So a couple examples for us. Around sustainability, the tech around the latest buzz, certainly in grid interactive buildings, how do we make this a reality of interacting with some technology across the platforms? But we also focus on bringing tenants and property owners together, in a commercial real estate setting to manage this, where, it's not really just a technology problem, and looking for value in how we manage that. When a building needs to shed load, it's really not the building owner. It's ultimately going to rely on the tenants, perhaps. AI as a pillar of Industry 4.0. I know this is, again, very broad. AI means multiple things to multiple people, but I'm sure everybody's using machine learning for predictive maintenance on pieces of equipment when they think they're going to fail based on how they're performing today, as opposed to some calendar-based maintenance cycle. We're doing some deep learning on image processing for quality, or taking a picture of a wind turbine blade when it's due for some maintenance and looking for hairline fractures. In those things, we've got some models for. And then last but not least, why we're here around Quuppa, around IoT, and really the food for AI systems today in a manufacturing setting, or a lot of different settings, where we can get some data, including a dot on a map, as Gondek says, for where things are and interacting with those things and mashing up with some other data. So again, just broadly, make it real, focus on some use cases, and get started early with a vision for the future is kind of our perspective here. So with that, yeah, hope that made sense, Seth.
Yeah, that does make sense. Thank you. And Brad, if you could round us out, same topic.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Seth. I think a lot has been said here, and I appreciate the approach with regard to Industry 4.0. If you're in manufacturing, you've heard the term, maybe even often overused. It's the application of it, and that focusing on the fact that it's not a one-time event that's going to get you to Industry 4.0. There is a roadmap involved. There are different pillars within Industry 4.0, but really the principle behind Industry 4.0 is to empower manufacturing companies to take all of their various systems of record and all of their various resources and to tie them together with a technology that's available on the market today to collaborate more efficiently, more effectively, to either increase rate, to increase first pass quality, all with a goal of improving manufacturing processes and manufacturing efficiencies.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense, Brad. I want to maybe just tease it a little bit further, as I think a lot of folks understand, certainly the people that are using Quuppa technology, that we're sort of laser focused in the arena of real-time location services and capabilities and that data set and providing, the best, most accurate data we can. That in combination with, a lot of the other IoT sensors and the information that's available in industry is, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinion, created a whole new real-time data set that wasn't available previously. And I guess if we tease it a little bit further, how does real-time location data fit into the solutions that you guys are offering? Is it enhancing? What can you just give a little bit more of a blush, Brad? Maybe since you wound us down, you can get us back in on this one.
Yeah, sure. So I'll take the whole comparing Industry 4.0 to IoT. Is IoT Industry 4.0 or is Industry 4.0 IoT? And our approach at Usecases is more so where we started, the four founders started the company, and what do you do with location? And that really is important because we often talk about in our world, or at least the lens with which we look at solutions and talk to customers through, is that just location by itself is really not that valuable. It's almost impossible to get a clear and robust ROI on just finding things. It's how you implement the location technologies and what you implement it with. So one of the things that we talk about is the whole focus around Industry 4.0 is building a cyber physical system. Well, what is a cyber physical system? The idea of a cyber physical system is that a computer can know what's going on anywhere and everywhere. So how do we give that ability to a computer, or even to back up a moment? Why would we want to give that visibility to a computer? And the approach and what Usecases has seen in the 15 plus years I've been deploying location technologies is that without visibility, there is absolutely no visibility into processes, and no visibility into processes equals invisible waste. And invisible waste is the enemy of rate, it's the enemy of efficiency. And so one of the things and one of the major benefits that you get initially by deploying and using sensing technologies to sense the motion and movement and interaction of objects, things, parts, assemblies, tools in the manufacturing business is actually that ability to see your flow. And we focus and call that the data gap. And so a lot of times we'll say, not just say, but we apply the principles of IoT by itself will not get you to Industry 4.0. IoT is primarily focused on the connectivity of and the insight into some piece of equipment. the manual movement interaction and the interaction of materials and parts and people is really 65 to 80% of manufacturing space and companies are actually movement and interaction that's not tied into the local area network. So that's where Usesense and where we really see location technologies bringing immense value to manufacturing is when you take that movement and interaction and you strategically bring it into to the local area network, and you give computers the ability to sufficiently understand, comprehend, and interact with the physical world. You can start this idea of multiple use cases with one platform and just continue to keep iterating on the technology that you invest in and realize your roadmap toward Industry 4.0.
That's really good. Yeah, thank you, Brad. Ron, any thoughts?
Oh, geez, Seth, where to begin really on how we use real-time location data in our solutions. Shameless plug here, Avanade. All right, I'm back. I hit the mute button. Shameless plug, avanade.com for some of our solutions that we go to market with. I'll touch on a couple of them here. We're really, location is core to what they do. And that's around connected construction and a connected mine solution where it is uber important on where workers are on a construction site and how we might blend that data with worker biometrics, to manage fatigue or some regulatory compliance around safety or some supervision thresholds. Similarly in connected mine, especially underground mines, where location of equipment is important to understand any constraints in the system, where non-productive time is very costly. So when is a shovel waiting for a truck, or vice versa, when is a truck waiting for a shovel? And we can see dwell time with real-time location tracking, as well as just tracking workers underground or above ground to understand perhaps their dosimetry or exposure in dangerous environmental conditions. A couple of other situations where it is important but not core to the solutions. We have a factory of the future approach really to address the Industry 4.0 challenges, and it's an ecosystem of how we connect people, assets, buildings, processes through a modern manufacturing facility. And then certainly last but not least, as we get into digital twins of places, and especially campuses, buildings, workplaces, and location becomes important when we mash that up with a map for either wayfinding or finding locations or people perhaps in an emergency situation in a campus environment as well. So lots to see and lots to do in how we mash up location data with our solutions over here. So yeah, that's kind of it.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Ron. And Gonzag, any thoughts yourself?
Well, I think my colleagues summarized very well the point. There is one thing that we see today is that it's very good to have tracking information. One important thing is that the market is moving. So now it's not only tracking high value asset at a given place from time to time. No, it's really tracking any kind of assets or people anywhere in a real time. So we see a lot of technologies here now in the market, but definitely, I mean, the technology provided by Quuppa is the one allowing to have this real time location and I will say with a very high accuracy. One other point that we see in the market is that our customers tends towards a single platform. We are talking about locate people, assets, but we can also bring some additional tools. I was saying, like for example, with the sensors, you can measure temperature, humidity. So we're able to bring a lot of information to our customers, and it's very important to be able to centralize everything in a single platform.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Gonzag. I know we kind of touched on a little bit in some of the earlier questions, but I want to open it up a little bit and ask you guys to give an example of, perhaps a client or a project that you worked on that's using real-time location, and to solve whatever that business problem is. Can you guys give us an example? And I want to be mindful of time as we proceed through some of the questions. You guys have provided some awesome answers and content so far, but any specific client that you guys care to talk about, business problem that you were able to help them address with real-time location? And maybe Brad, if you don't mind starting with you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Seth. Yeah, there's Ubisense arguably got their start in the automotive industry and tracking tools, which is something that we do quite often now with ultra wideband and our Dimension 4 platform. But really, where a lot of our IP is in our Smartspace software. And again, shameless plug here as well for Ubisense is that our Smartspace is sensor agnostic. And often in meaning that there's a number of different sensing location technologies that companies that commit to location services and bringing that into their local area networks will ultimately end up using. There's a myriad of them. And we take the approach of one single application configuration platform that we use with Smartspace. And one of the applications that we see often, especially in online manufacturing and automotive or commercial vehicle, agricultural type machining, of course, the takt times are very different between the various industries. But the one thing that happens often is most of those vehicles or equipment are coming off the line and they have some form of rework that needs to happen. And they really come off of the line and they go into a black hole. And it's very difficult. And in one particular application that we help the customer with, and this has been rinsed and repeated a number of different times, is there's typically a queue that when these vehicles or machines come off the line, there's an inspection queue, and it's being inspected, and then it's being routed to the different areas where potential rework or maybe even just being stored in a finished location somewhere, whether that be outside. Well, when you get to specific production rates that you see in these industries, it's very easy to swell to the hundreds to thousands of finished product just sitting out in the yard. It gets extremely expensive. And just in one particular case alone, we came in behind a study that was done by a company that we ended up deploying a real-time location system to help them with visibility once these machines came offline and in their finished areas. They were able to take down their efficiency or to improve their efficiency just by looking at the process and free quite a bit up. But they had about they still had a bottleneck that was quite significant. And a lot of that bottleneck just happened in not knowing what machine needed to be worked on next, where the equipment for that machine was. So taking the approach of integrating the location technology in with their MES system, as well as with their ERP system, so you know where the quality notes were, and giving that to the hands of their employees and knowing exactly where something was at, exactly where the tools are, and whether they were available to do the specific repair work. They were going through a production increase at the point, and just the RTLS system was able to get them 65% of the way to what they needed in terms of throughput to meet the rate increase.
Yeah, that's a great example. Ron, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Seth. Geez, Brad, you know what? My example here is going to sound super boring to what you just described, but I'll talk about a recent one here for the group and live up to my promise earlier about driving ROI for solutions. So imagine yourself inside a very large manufacturing facility, 400,000 plus square feet. There are 7 production lines and about 16 stations on each production line. The task here was tracking labor hours for each of these stations across each of these lines. So the product being manufactured in this case, if anyone is familiar with modular manufacturing for buildings, were these modules that would go somewhere to a site and effectively erect a building in a matter of weeks, as a matter of months, as it would take constructing it on site. So the organization was spending a tremendous amount of time just from all their labor, 400 plus trade people across all the trades that you can imagine if you've ever been through a home renovation. So plumbers, electricians, floorers, drywallers, final finishers, you name it. They would go in, work their shift, and sort of guesstimate where they had spent their time, which station, which module they were working on, which line they were working on. So we got less than 6 months ROI from implementing an RTLS solution that automated where Ron was, or Brad was, or Seth or Gonzag was for any second of the day, and matched that up with the module where Ron, Brad, Seth happened to be for that day, and aggregated that for the folks in finance, time entry accounting, and took the weight off all of the workers for this manual exercise that would take them 10, 15 minutes through the day. And by the way, wasn't very accurate. So they were looking for a much more accurate and auditable time tracking for cost accounting for these modules. Again, shameless plug here. We took this out of Quuppa up into the Azure cloud, had created a workflow, as I mentioned, for the finance team, basically to approve this, modify any of the records for whatever adjustments or overrides that they needed to do, and then sent this on its way down to Dynamics, which is Microsoft's ERP solution. So this was a great automated workflow, as I mentioned, 4 or 5 months ROI in the implementation. Super boring, tracking time for people in a plant, but amazingly valuable, and built a bunch of use cases on top of that. So with that, I'll pause.
It's very good. It sounds like, taking some of the manual and labor intensive kind of processes and out of the hands of humans and allowing automation to handle it for you. So that's a great example.
Yeah, here, let me, Seth, I don't know, in my camera here, put my hard hat on. Here's a Quuppa tag attached to my helmet. Workers were putting them on their helmet, their belt, their boot, in this example. So anyway.
I was not expecting visual aid, Ron. Thank you very much for that.
I should have an ELA tag on my helmet there, Gonzag, next time.
Very soon, I hope.
Well, Gonzag, we've done a lot of interesting things with ELA. Anything you want to highlight?
Yeah. There is one example that I have in mind, and it is a well-known actor in aerospace. The use case is pretty simple too. They were trying to track tools and small equipment in their facilities. So basically, they had 3 main criteria to validate. So the first one, they wanted to improve, I would say, the business, but mainly the processes. No, so they wanted to increase the operational performance of their teams. They wanted to reduce material and tool losses in their facility, and they wanted to analyze the frequency of the use of the equipment. So that was the first criteria. The second one was the efficiency, improve material traceability. So they wanted to reduce the time they are wasting to search for the tools and equipment in their site. They wanted to automate certain tasks, like the inventory, for example. And 2 main criteria that was pretty challenging, I would say. The first one was to be integrated the solution with their existing customer, with their existing ERP. So you mentioned it, Ron. This is something that customers are really asking for today. And the second one is the accuracy that they were looking for. It had to be less than 3 meters accuracy. So definitely, Quuppa was the perfect option. No? The third point was the security, and more than everything, security of the data collected. No, they had to comply with some standards as part of the traceability. So we had to face, I will say, all these challenges in order to install the solution. To summarize the project, it was a very fast project. The first phase, of course, the pilot. It's important to mention they already tested some other technologies before. No? So we had the pilot phase with 400 tags, 18 locators, and we had to cover 1,000 square meters. I'm sorry, I'm gonna talk in square meters. I'll let you do the the conversion. No? During the pilot phase, they had two steps to validate. The first one was the validation of the technical choice, so the infrastructure and the tags that they were using. And the second one was the integration of the technology into their business processes. So all of this was validated by the customer. Finally, we roll out the solution, 25,000 tags. We had to cover 55,000 square meters. So that represents multi sites, several sites for the customers, and more or less 300 locators in order to cover these different sites. No, it was pretty challenging, more than everything, considering all the environment that we face in these buildings. It was a lot of metal. It was multiple sites. Different buildings, high ceiling, approximately 8 meters, and very high density of tags. So that was I would say one of the most interesting and biggest project that we have to install with ELA and Quuppa.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Gonzag. I appreciate that. I was going to ask you guys about challenges that you've seen in some of the projects, but in the interest of time, unfortunately, I'm going to have to fast track us a bit, and so I'm going to leave that one go. And in one of the other panels, one of our partners implemented a social distancing and contact tracing solution for a plastics manufacturing company, and right after they implemented the solution, the owner of the company noticed that there seemed to be I call a lot of activity and congestion of his employees around a certain area of machines within the factory itself. And he ended up ultimately moving some of the machines around to improve what he learned after he interviewed a bunch of his employees. It was a bottleneck issue in their process flow. And this to me was a sort of a great example of a secondary benefit that this business owner discovered after he had already implemented the solution for a completely different purpose, which was the social distancing and contact tracing, and which lends me to obviously an investment in RTLS and an investment in IoT, and certainly in industry. You know, you're looking at drawing as much value out of a solution as you possibly can. But often people are focused very specifically on solving a specific issue or problem that's driving the activity. Can you guys, have you seen this kind of thing in your customers? Were there a customer that you had that sort of discovered some secondary benefit that they didn't foresee, didn't project for, wasn't part of the ROI in getting the whole project initiated in the first place? And if you do, can you share an example quickly? Maybe Ron, you have anything on your side?
Yeah, Seth, I call this the BOGO. If you're in retail, BOGO maybe makes sense. So buy one, get one free.
Yeah.
So yeah, now that we've got, I'll go back to that, example I used around tracking workers in a plant for what was the original use case from the CFO for cost accounting for their modules, for their product. And we had built, because we came with a platform, some other tools for them. You'd mentioned COVID tracking. That was the easy one. So what they couldn't do before answering that question, how much time did Seth spend last Tuesday, more than 15 minutes within a meter of Gonzag? That took them hours, and usually they couldn't even get to the answer. So we built that for them because had already been built months prior for some other COVID solutions they had. We also did the easy analysis around line and station productivity that really was, I don't know, shouldn't have been eye-opening for the plant manager, but somehow the data told him a story once he saw it visualized that he had not thought of before, to say the least, and we can drill down more on that. But in the interest of time, they also jumped on health and safety use case. Like, hey Ron, now that we know where people are, can we put some locators outside? Because we run, safety is top priority. If everyone here deals with industrial and manufacturing settings, the worker safety is of paramount importance. So what about when we run drills? How do we measure our time to evacuate? How do we measure our time to muster points? And how do we ensure people got out of the plant? So we tweaked a couple things and built that for them. So, there's always this BOGO when we get location tracking on tools, on assets, on moving equipment, on people. This is easy wins on top of the original ROI that we had built for this customer. So just a couple of examples, but I'll turn the floor back to some others.
That's perfect. Thank you, Ron. And Brad, how about you?
Yeah, I can. Thanks, Seth. And I really have to learn how to speak more fluent Canadian. Ron just sounds so much better. I think one of the things that people overlook is we often at Usecases, when we talk to customers, we talk about our data lake, and our data lake is location history. And when you collect that over a long period of time, you can begin to see traits, and you can begin to see some of that invisible process waste that I had mentioned early on. So there are a number of very powerful third-party ways to ingest location information and use that data lake to just do some continuous improvement and analytics. The other one that I would mention is the offline application that I already mentioned. We had one company that has kind of standardized on this solution worldwide, and what they wanted to do is they already had their QA inspectors walking around with tablets, but the tablets were not connected to the location platform, and they wanted to use the location platform to walk up. Their idea was they wanted the operator to be able to walk up to a specific vehicle, and whatever vehicle they walked up to, two objects coming together with different tags, it would automatically trigger the inspection process, and it wouldn't trigger the inspection process based upon wherever that operator was standing at the vehicle. And that was a real short putt with the type of location infrastructure that they had already put in, and a relatively easy jump for them to be able to build a tool like that that enabled the automatic initiation or trigger of an inspection process. And even we had heard, in deploying this a number of times, sometimes there were even inspections that were happening without a person physically at the vehicle. I know none of us can believe that, but that was a pretty rewarding. I like the analogy BOGO, but I can't claim that it was necessarily BOGO, but it was a pretty short putt to deploy that and put the location technologies inside of the tablets they were using to deploy that.
Got it. Yeah, that's terrific. If you guys don't mind, I want to talk a little bit about integration, old and new technologies and systems and those sort of things. Of course, in any industrial manufacturing environment, there's potential for a variety of systems, legacy systems that have been in place for years that are integral to existing workflow processes. And Gonzag, you get a pass on this one. This one, I think I'm going to point it towards Brad and Ron. How do you guys work on integrating those new data feeds like location into these systems? Maybe Brad, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Thanks, Seth. Appreciate the question. I'd say, for Usecases, 90+% of our deployments are with some subtype of business system of record, whether that's ERP, MES, warehouse management system. Many of them, especially in the MES realm, are homegrown. I think it really starts in having products and platforms that are open. And as I've already mentioned, our Smartspace location application platform is open, and it has the various integrations that are needed in order to do endpoints or JSONs or any type of integration that really could be needed to get just the specific information that's needed out of that system into the hands of the operators. Going back to Industry 4.4, we're looking to empower, and this is where really the location information and deploying location technologies, really the value begins to really become exponential, is when you take that business data, system data, and you take the context of what the location technology or location platform is giving in the manufacturing environment, and marry that or couple that with the information that's needed at that specific time for that specific process. It really brings a lot of value into manufacturing operations. So certainly deploying with and integrating with location systems, obviously that's something that's very sensitive with data and connecting to those systems. But certainly that is, and often it's not necessarily an initial phase, but certainly should be, in our view anyway, a goal or on the roadmap for an organization to bring those systems of record in and merge them with the location data.
That's very good. Thank you. Thank you. And Ron, I know systems integration is kind of, you know, foundational to what Avanade does. What any thoughts from you?
Yeah, thanks. It's kind of our jam. I don't know if that's a Canadian expression, Brad.
It's an 80s expression. Ron.
Yeah, I know it, but I do border Canada.
Oh. So you're right. It does keep us busy day in and day out, and it's one of the reasons why customers come to system integrators like Avanade, certainly to deal with these complex legacy system integration points. And you know, Brad said it well, but I want to drill home a couple of points. One is focus on the ROI. I've seen a lot of these cases where, you know what, someone might want to integrate something in real time, but we don't need it real time to get our use case, to understand some value. So just be cautious of what might turn into a science experiment where it doesn't necessarily need to be. But if in fact we do need to integrate with these things, and we do, and it's hard, and it's especially hard in some cases, a couple of points maybe for the group here and the audience listening. One is, you know, find someone that's been there, done that before. I mentioned we're owned by Accenture, you know, 500,000 people across the world, multiple acquisitions in all kinds of vertical spaces. I can usually find somebody that's sort of been there, done that before, and customers rely on that to have that experience and bring that perspective. If not, you know, reach out to vendor partners, reach out to, you know, organizations that sort of do ancillary services if you haven't done it before. So nothing practical other than, you know, a bit of empathy here. Seth, this is hard. And it's going to be case by case in these implementations, because as Brad said, we've come across systems that were built by someone that, you know, doesn't, you know, even walk the planet any longer in customer systems.
Great. Well, thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. So we're getting down to the last two questions, and this one perhaps maybe a short one. I'm not sure, but my next one is specifically for Brad. So you guys. You know, all of you have told us about the sheer amount of, you know, IoT sensors and data in industrial environments that you're dealing with. Brad, I know you guys have done a lot of work with ultra wideband, which to some degree could be perceived as a competing location technology and potentially redundant, you know, in terms of location information. So I will ask the pointed question to you: why does Usecases have Quuppa AOA in the portfolio?
Oh, that is definitely setting me up there, isn't it, Seth? No, that I appreciate the question, and I certainly appreciate where that question could come from as well. You know, I'll start this way. Our approach toward projects and working with companies is to help them achieve Industry 4.0 and achieve operational efficiency and more throughput. We are not an organization, nor has Usecases ever been singularly focused in trying to do that with one sensing technology. There's no one sensor that does all jobs. What we and the experience of Usecases has been that companies that commit to bringing location services into their organizations, they will settle on a myriad of different types of sensing technologies. And there are a number of very good sensing technologies out in the world today. With specific, to not avoid your question, I think we look at ultra wideband and where there are multi-path environments, difficult environments, ultra wideband at times seems to be the right location technology of choice of where companies would go to do that, achieving things like Six Sigma reliability on an automotive line that's reliable. And when you look at other areas of objects and assets and a high number of them moving around in a facility like that, maybe even in the offline application that I talked about, or the materials and supplies getting to line side, BLE is definitely a good solution for that. And you know, a plug for Quuppa, certainly AOA BLE, which is really what appealed Usecases to partner and approach Quuppa, is one of the things that we do in our engineering lab in the UK is we test the different types of location technologies. Obviously, Smartspace, our platform, is agnostic to sensing technologies. And we partner with the ones who we think are best in class, and we think the Quuppa BLE AOA is definitely best in class.
Thank you, Brad. You are a true professional. I appreciate that candor, and yeah, and thank you for taking the question. Okay, so we're running a bit short on time. So my last question: in a perfect world, we'd be able to snap our fingers and the benefits of any new technology and data set that have available to us would be there through a let's call it a trouble-free implementation. And however, we obviously know that implementations require excellent planning, cross-functional participation, and great project management. So if we focus on the implementation of location solutions, are there any suggestions, gotchas, recommendations that you folks would make for anybody in the audience that's making an implementation, interested in making an implementation more successful? Kind of wide open. And any thoughts as we kind of close out our discussion here today? Gonzague, maybe you start with us since you've been able to get a little break.
Sure, thank you, Seth. Well, I think there are a lot of recommendations, but to summarize some of them, I will say the first one is very much about understanding the tracking use case or the problem to be solved that the customer has. No, it's crucial to define a class of projects where our technology brings significant value to the customer, allowing them to scale without going through a long and painful proof of concept. Also, technology sometimes is not enough. No, our customer need a tracking system, but also help to integrate the system into their ERP, for example. So it's very important to guide, I will say, our customer into the different steps that we have for the installation, and in order to do the correct to have a correct installation. No? And finally, I will say that the pilot phase is also a good time to calculate the return on investment of the solution, because this is where you see really all the benefits of the solution that you are using, not only the cost, but really all the benefits. We made the solution easier to adopt by allowing more assets, equipment to be tracked, and to bring more knowledge to the decision makers in the industry. So that are some of the recommendations that we could have.
Great, thank you, Gonzague. And Ron, some closing thoughts there?
Pile on from Gonzag, you know, great points. I'm going to drill home. I think this is the third or fourth time, if I haven't said it 3 or 4 times yet, I should have ROI, ROI, ROI. Gonzag mentioned this just with find a sponsor. That sponsor is typically not in IT. I had a great CIO tell me one time, there is no such thing as an IT project. So find a sponsor, you know, number 1 or number 2 on every survey, McKinsey, whoever, Accenture, Avanade, why IT projects fail, exec sponsor. So find a sponsor that has an ROI, focus there, and use that as a building block for solving the next use case, solving the next ROI, because these things typically, you know, BOGO, build on each other, whether or not it's a short putt, Brad, or a buy one, get one free. They are incremental and additive to each other. So focus there. The only other thing I would throw on, no details too small. And that goes to your great project management point, Seth, around, you know, what vendor's doing the cabling? When can they start? How much cable do we need? Is there network capacity? Do we have the devices in the racks? Do we need a new rack? What edge device do we have? What capacity do we have on that thing? What other applications are running on that thing? And the list goes on and on for these IoT solutions and AI solutions. They are complex. They can be difficult to integrate, as we touched on. So no detail is too small. Don't go this, you know, the first time without someone that's been there before, whether or not that's Avanade or Ubisense or ELA or Quuppa. Get some help if you're going down these paths the first time. That we can save you some trouble.
Excellent. Thank you, Ron. And Brad, if you can help close us out, if you would.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Seth. And I'll piggyback a bit on what Ron said. The whole idea of finding a sponsor, I completely agree with that. Also find who your end customer is and really define what their problem is, and build the tool that fixes the problem. And while you're building a tool that fixes the problem, look for vendors, look for system integrators that use a modular approach. You certainly don't want to invest in a complete software platform and get functionality bloat when all you really need initially is visibility. And I think I would say in terms of pilots, you know, the location technology, if you're working to Ron and Gonzag's points that they've mentioned here, if you're working with a company that you know has been around for a while that focuses on location technologies, pilot should be a short visit, not a destination in the project, just to validate something. And that's pretty much what I'd kind of summarize.
Cool.
Or how I summarize it.
Well, thank you. Well, unfortunately, that's about all the time we have for this session. So just a couple recap points, clearly from the discussion. And by the way, I feel like I got a whole lot smarter in this hour with you guys. So thank you, and I hope our audience feels the same way. But from the discussion with our panel today, we certainly touched on how folks are using location services for manufacturing and industrial environments, whether the use cases are asset people tracking, process improvement analysis, protecting worker safety, these type of things. We also heard about how location services often, you know, start with a very specific application or problem and a business that needed to address, and how businesses leverage location data for a variety of other productivity improvements within the business processes. We heard some examples of that from all of our panelists today, so that's very exciting. And some guidance in terms of kicking these projects off, making sure that you have the appropriate executive and IT sponsorship, and making sure that your ROI is multifaceted. So I think all in all, just a wonderful session, great information. Let me wrap up by thanking our panelists here today. Thank you guys very much. And we look forward to hearing more from you on your continued work on implementing and using location services in your field and in your businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you.